Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have a hopefully interesting episode, insightful episode for you today on Jordan Peterson and his latest humiliation, this latest destruction of Jordan Peterson. There's a viral video of Jordan Peterson debating 20 atheists, and this is put out by the channel on YouTube called Jubilee, and they do these kinds of debates where they have one person representing a religion or conservatism or liberalism, whatever, left-wing, right-wing, and then they're surrounded by individuals of the opposing side. And then those individuals, one by one, come to debate the person in the center. Now, the way that it's set up is that the person who is in the center, the primary person, it's set up to make it easier for him to win or to control the debate. It's basically set up so that the person in the center looks as good as possible and is able to control, how long someone can speak. If they don't like the person, they can say, "I'm done with this person," and take them off. So the rules of this are set up to be very advantageous for Jordan Peterson, yet he gets absolutely demolished. He gets absolutely destroyed or cooked, as the younger generation might say. He got absolutely cooked by what are just random Redditors, like people off of Reddit, and very interesting people, and you'll see it when we react to part of the video, inshallah. So this is just a joy to see. It's a joy to see because, especially in the past year and a half, Jordan Peterson has been a vocal supporter of Zionism, a vocal supporter of Israel. As soon as war breaks out and Israel starts committing atrocities against the Palestinians, Jordan Peterson says, give them hell, give them hell, finish the job, things like this. Just the kind of bloodlust coming from Jordan Peterson. And I tweeted at him. I replied to one of his tweets back then in 2023. And I said, how does it feel to be a prostitute for Israel? And Peterson immediately blocked me because that tweet ratioed him. It's ratioing Jordan Peterson, and his response is only to block. He can't actually give a substantive response. So inshallah, today we're going to talk about this demolition of Jordan Peterson and exposing him for the charlatan and the fraud that he is. Now, most of the analysis that people have focused on is a viral clip, portion of this debate against 20 atheists, where this atheist, one of the atheists, his name is Danny, coincidentally, grills Jordan Peterson, and he basically puts him on the spot. Are you not a Christian? Are you not a Christian? And Jordan Peterson refuses to affirm that he's a Christian. And so this atheist says, don't you know where you are? Don't you know where you are? I thought I was debating a Christian. Atheist versus Christian. Are you in the right video? And the title of this Jubilee video was titled "One Christian versus 20 Atheists." But as it turned out, Jordan Peterson refused to affirm that he's a Christian. And so Jubilee actually changed the title of this video and changed it to Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists, as opposed to One Christian versus 20 atheists. So they literally had to change the title of the video because they were expecting Jordan Peterson to defend Christianity, and he won't even affirm that he's a Christian. So there's a line specifically where Jordan Peterson says, "Oh, you're really something. You're really something," as a comeback to this Danny atheist. And then the atheist responds, "Well, you're really nothing. You're really nothing, actually." And then Jordan Peterson gets too angry and he says, "I'm done with this guy. I'm done with him." And he has to leave the hot seat. So this is a very profound point, actually, that Jordan Peterson is nothing. What he's advocating for in terms of religious belief in terms of a traditional religion is nothing. He's not advocating for traditional religion. But he is advocating for, what he is advocating for is a kind of liberal, secular utilitarianism. That is actually what he is advocating for under the guise of traditional Judeo-Christian religion or values. And so this is his grift, and he presents himself, or he gives the connotation that he is this Christian, and he is able to attract massive audiences who are paying him millions of dollars just to buy his products. He sells courses, he sells a writing program, he sells books. All of this material is targeted toward a very specific audience, a kind of young Christian background audience in the West that is looking for meaning, is looking for, okay, well, what is the purpose of life? I am living in a dystopia. The modern West has been destroyed economically. I have no economic future like my parents had. I've been promised an economic future through getting education, but I got the education. I went to the university. I got the degree. I can't find a job, or if I find a job, it can barely allow me to make ends meet. I can't buy my own house. Then on the gender side, I can't get married. I am not able to actually find a compatible woman who has not, slept with 200 men prior to me. All I can find are these, as Fresh and Fit would say, 304s. I just see 304s everywhere. And if a woman even gives me the time of day, she is not even willing to be a traditional wife. She doesn't want to cook. She doesn't want to clean. She wants to be a boss babe. And I have to just be her simp. I just have to support that. So the whole idea of having a traditional marriage, having children, that's off the table. So this sounds like a disaster. This is a dystopia. My whole life is a dystopia. I have no friends. All of my social connections have been supplanted with a social media network where I'm just on social media or I'm playing video games. It's very hard to find someone to connect to in real life. Maybe I'm addicted to drugs. Maybe I'm addicted to pain medication or antidepressants, whatever it may be, alcohol. So this is the kind of life that so many in the West, especially in the age bracket of in their 20s or 30s, this is the kind of life they're living. And then Jordan Peterson comes and he says that, well, it's the problem. I'll point to you the problem. A big part of the problem is the establishment. The establishment, they're pushing LGBT, they're pushing transgenderism. You have to start addressing people according to their pronouns. Jordan Peterson presents himself as an anti-establishment figure. When he first comes onto the scene in 2018, that's where he gets his popularity. He starts going super viral all over the world. So he not only presents himself as anti-establishment, he also presents himself as religious, because the establishment is anti-religion. The establishment is against traditional religion and traditional values. So Jordan Peterson presents himself as someone who is a follower of Judeo-Christian values. He quotes the Bible. He quotes especially the Old Testament. He brings in the Old Testament stories. He says, this is the solution. The answer is found in the Bible. We have these stories in the Bible that aspire us to the values that we need to pursue that will take us out from this dystopia. So he becomes a modern guru. He amasses huge popularity, huge wealth. And that was his career. That was his career until 2022. Until 2022. And just for full transparency, and I've said this, maybe people who haven't following my channel for that long don't know this, but back in those days, back in 2018 or even 2017, I was saying, look, Jordan Peterson is making some good points here. Jordan Peterson has some good points, specifically on the gender issue. Now imagine that. Like, imagine how bad the situation was 8 years ago, 7 years ago, where we have to point to Jordan Peterson as being based. Jordan Peterson makes a good point that women and men are not the same. Women and men, they have differences in their personalities. They have differences in the roles that they can perhaps perform within society, within a family. These are the kinds of things that Jordan Peterson was arguing and was presenting to his audience. And then someone like me is saying, yeah, this is contrary to what the establishment is pushing, that men and women are exactly the same. They have exactly the same capabilities. They have exactly the same potentialities. Obviously, Jordan Peterson wasn't going to go to the extent that I go in saying that, yeah, well, men and women are different down the spectrum when it comes to not only their potentiality, also their intellectual capabilities, their physical capabilities, their personality. He's not going to go that far, but at least he's indicating that the establishment liberal claim that men and women are exactly the same and they're exactly interchangeable. And as long as you're a parent, it doesn't matter if you're a male and a male, a male and a female and a female, 3 males, 3 females, non-binary. It doesn't matter. A person is a person, and gender has no meaning. It's just a social construction. Then you have Jordan Peterson saying, no, there is an actual biological basis for gender. There is a biological basis for the nuclear family structure, or a traditional or a patriarchal family structure. At that time, this was a radical proposition. This was extremely based. Jordan Peterson is really, and he is Canadian. He's risking his professorship, his role in Toronto. He's being actually attacked by the government. He's being attacked by media, this liberal media. So he became a heroic figure, speaking common sense in that environment. Now, obviously, it would be natural that once those ideas become more popular, once people are more and more dissatisfied with the establishment status quo, as more and more people are questioning that status quo and the establishment and this whole promise of liberal democracy and equality of all, and that everyone is exactly the same in every way, biologically, in terms of intelligence, in terms of personality, as these liberal myths are being destroyed, and people are becoming more skeptical of these values due to economic factors, due to social malaise, due to the rise in crime rates throughout the Western world. As these truths or these liberal myths start crumbling, then someone like Jordan Peterson in this new context is not going to appear as based, is not going to appear as prophetic or insightful. And so he of course, loses popularity. But that wasn't the only factor that led to people becoming doubtful or skeptical about the trustworthiness or the insight of Jordan Peterson. He also started changing his message. He started moving away from just a focus on gender and personality and psychological relations into geopolitics. And if you recall, this was in 2022, Jordan Peterson comes out and he says that my message to Muslims, that was the title of the video, my message to Muslims. And then he had a video, my message to Christians, my message to Christians. He, of course, didn't finish the trifecta. He didn't have a message to Jews, but he had a message to Christians and he had a message to Muslims. And it was all about the Middle East. We need peace in the Middle East. We need peace. We need to stop attacking Israel. Israel is the only democracy. We need to embrace tolerance. We need to put aside violence. This is his message to Muslims and Christians. So prior to this, I had started warning against Jordan Peterson. I had started to say, like, look, I previously had promoted what he was saying about gender. He was saying things that even certain Muslim imams weren't saying. The compassionate imams refused to acknowledge gender differences and gender roles. because the tide has shifted. Now they are starting to acknowledge in a superficial way that, yeah, well, men and women are different. That's the wisdom of Islam. Now you have some of these compassionate imams who are talking like this. Now you have compassionate imams finally coming out and saying, yeah, I don't agree with LGBT. Now that the political tide has shifted. They weren't saying it back then. And now they're saying it out of convenience. This is just a very superficial about face or turn of face now that the political context and the social context has changed. But Jordan Peterson was being even more vocal than even some of these compassionate imams. But now in 2022, he starts getting more explicit in supporting Israel. And then in October, I think it was October or September of 2022, he actually made a trip to Israel. He's touring Israel with Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire pick up Jordan Peterson and put him on their network as one of their Christian commentators, one of their Christian pundits, influencers, psychoanalysts, whatever. This is when things really took a nosedive for Jordan Peterson, especially as far as Muslims are concerned. And then things went from bad to worse. Not only is Jordan Peterson touring Israel with Ben Shapiro, not only is he telling Muslims you have to really accept the Abraham Accords, you have to accept the Abraham Accords, this deal that has been formed between Israel and some of these Gulf countries, some of these Arab countries. This is a path to peace. You need to accept it. Pushing this kind of Zionist line, he's now meeting with Netanyahu. He literally has a sit-down meeting with Ben Shapiro and Netanyahu, and they're enjoying company with each other, talking about how they're so committed to peace, and this is really the true message of the Bible. So then, by that point, it becomes very clear what Jordan Peterson is all about. He is just a shill. And then there was an interview. Brother Muhammad Hijab had an interview with Jordan Peterson. And that went viral, especially because Muhammad Hijab is asking, well, do you believe in God? Asking Jordan Peterson, because Muhammad Hijab and Hamza Sortsis is there as well. Brother Hamza Sortsis, they're both talking to Jordan Peterson, and they're trying to give him dawah. They're trying to draw him closer to Islam. But then the whole conversation takes a sharp right turn when Jordan Peterson won't even affirm that he believes in God. Or he and that's the viral clip. Like, well, what do you mean by believe? What do you mean by believe? What do you mean by exists? Like, does God exist? What does that even mean? So then even Muhammad Hijab, Hamza Sortsis, you can tell that they're very confused and uncomfortable. Like, oh, wait, I thought we were talking to a Christian. And it's not even, he can't even affirm that he believes in God. He just believes in God as a higher reality, a higher objective reality, the universe as a whole. That's what we can consider to be God. So that came out in that conversation with Muhammad Hijab and Hamza Sortsis. So by that point, I mean, as far as Muslims are concerned, his reputation was in tatters. And then October 7th happened. And then Jordan Peterson said, give them hell. And that was the end of that. That was the end of any last remaining Muslim fan that he had. He flushed it down the toilet because he's just like that. That just becomes clear how much of a shill he is. He doesn't even have the least bit of concern for Palestinians, any concern for the lives of 2 million people in Gaza. And he's advocating this kind of violent brutality in this harsh way, give them hell. So that was the end as far as Muslims are concerned, and many Christians as well. Many Christians have over the years realized that Jordan Peterson is just a grifter. And this represents, this kind of shift in attitudes towards Jordan Peterson, now specifically talking about Christians. It represents a kind of awakening for Christians as well, because the kind of popularity decline that we see from Jordan Peterson is also reflected or correlated with the decline in popularity of someone like Ben Shapiro. Someone like Ben Shapiro, someone like Charlie Kirk, even to a certain extent, Fox News commentators. Christians are realizing that, wait. It doesn't seem like we're prioritizing Christianity and Christian belief. It seems like we're prioritizing this idea of Judeo-Christianity, which is beholden to the state of Israel. It has more to do with the state of Israel than it has to do with Jesus Christ. And this became accentuated by or emphasized by Candace Owens. Candace Owens was kicked out of the Daily Wire. Why? Because Candace Owens says that I disagree with the killing of children. I'm a Christian. And I have a conscience, and I cannot abide by this mass slaughter of Palestinian women and children. And I don't care what Hamas did. I don't care what happened on October 7th. That does not justify the ethnic cleansing, the genocide of Palestinians. That was Candace Owens' stance. She was with the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire. And the Daily Wire obviously has these kinds of connections with Netanyahu and literally the government of Israel. And they kick her out. They say, okay, we're parting ways with Candace Owens. The good news for Candace Owens is that she has experienced far more popularity and she has gone far more viral independently than she was with Daily Wire. And Daily Wire is on a steep nosedive of decline. They filed for bankruptcy and they're experiencing all kinds of financial difficulties, and they have lost a huge portion of their audience because people are on Candace Owens' side. Candace Owens is right, actually. As a Christian, how can we're seeing all these children being massacred. We're seeing these images of children literally being burned alive, the most horrific things that we have ever seen in our lives, that we never imagined that this kind of brutality was possible. And yet it's happening to Palestinians, and the state of Israel is conducting this genocide. And we have the conservative commentators who are just writing a blank check to Israel, giving them moral license. Yeah, they should. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to defend itself. So that moral hypocrisy is so blatant. It's so blatant, and that results in the decline of your popularity. If you are seen as a hypocrite, who can listen to you? Who can follow you? Jordan Peterson, you claim to be an activist for peace. You claim to be an advocate for peace and harmony in the Middle East, yet you're tweeting, give them hell. How is that in line with peace and harmony between people? This hypocrisy is so apparent and so brazen. So Candace Owens comes out and she says, Christ is king. This expression, Christ is king. I'm a Christian. I prioritize Jesus Christ above all else. Christ is king. And then who comes out and condemns Candace Owens? Well, Ben Shapiro does, obviously, but he's not a Christian. Jordan Peterson comes out, and he's part of a report that says that saying Christ is king makes you an extremist and a radical and potentially violent. You're promoting a kind of violent extremism. And so Christ is king is a type of dog whistle that promotes racism and anti-Semitism and violence. So we have to censor this word. We have to censor this phrase. People who are saying Christ is king have to be censored. They are dark tetrad personalities who will say Christ is king. People who are suffering from psychopathy, they have mental problems, they have proclivities towards violence. And I, in my professional opinion as a psychologist, if you say Christ is king, then I think that this is quite dangerous and quite indicative of a violent personality. So Christians are hearing this and they're saying, you're a Christian? Jordan Peterson, you're a Christian and you have a problem with the expression Christ is king? Like, why can't that be said? Why can't Christians pronounce their faith in Christianity and Jesus Christ? You have a problem with this and you're associating it with violence? You're associating with anti-Semitism? That doesn't sound like a Christian perspective or a biblical perspective, it sounds like a Zionist perspective. It sounds like you're a part of the Daily Wire, which is connected to the Israeli government, and you are being required as a part of being in the Daily Wire to come out and speak against Christ is King. Why? Because the people who are using this expression are the same people who are the most critical of Israel. They're the most critical of Israel's genocidal policies in Gaza, in the West Bank, and so forth. That seems to be what's really going on, and the grift is over. So that happened at the end of last year, I believe, or earlier this year. So Christians are just waking up to Jordan Peterson not really having their same worldview, their same morality, their same beliefs and norms. Jordan Peterson is just a grifter. And why I say the end of Jordan Peterson as the title of this video, it just seems like it all came to a head, or was capped with a cherry on top, you could say, with this interaction with 20 atheists in this Jubilee video. That seemed to be, the exclamation mark, or the, putting a cap on it to the end of Jordan Peterson's Christian grift. So I want to go through not the whole video, not the whole debate with these atheists, because it becomes monotonous. But I want to just go through maybe the first 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and react and give analysis, because I think it's important to give analysis on this. Why? People know that, okay, Jordan Peterson is a grifter. We know that. He's not really a Christian. We know that. That's not really news. That's not something that is unique that I'm saying. Everyone is saying this. What I think is significant, though, is how he is able to water down Christianity, how he is able to shift Christianity into a type of liberal secularism. How he has basically shifted Christian or the Christian understanding of God, Christian understanding of belief, and Christian understanding of worship, how he's shifted this into a liberal understanding of God, belief, and worship, and norms and values. And that is interesting to study and analyze, because that same kind of shift happens in every religion. And it happens in Islam, it happens with Muslims who want to liberalize Islam in order to appease a secular, atheist, political and social order, legal order in which we all live. Whether you're in the West, in the United States, in Canada, and the UK, or you're in the Muslim world, where this order has been opposed through international law, human rights law, etc. So we have to understand how this shift is happening. Christianity is a good example case. Judaism is a good example case. And we can see how this has been applied in similar fashion to Islam. That's my pitch for why you should watch the rest of the stream. So we will get into that now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. The link to the newsletter is below, and you can subscribe to it, and super chats. If you have a comment that you want me to prioritize, we'll get into super chats at the end of the show. I will, as long as it's relevant and worth my time without delving or going too far astray from the topic at hand, I'll read it and respond to it. So leave your super chat. And people have been asking, is there any other way that we can contribute to Muslim Skeptic? We don't want to go through YouTube. No problem. Just go to MuslimSkeptic.com. We have a donation tab, a donation link. You can contribute. We're nonprofit. You can contribute in that way as well. And there will be less of a fee than what YouTube charges. Okay, well, let's get into the analysis. All right, so the way that this was structured, there were 4 claims that Jordan Peterson wanted to make. and the atheists are going to challenge him on these claims. So claim number one, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So this is the first. So this has to do with God. So Jordan Peterson in this section is going to redefine God. He's going to redefine God, and that's, we'll see, this is his whole strategy. He redefines God, he redefines belief, he redefines worship, he redefines morality, and he says that, look, his whole strategy basically is this, that, well, God is just belief in a higher power. God is just belief in an objective reality, an infinite truth. And so that is, atheists also accept that. Atheists also accept the concept of reality. They accept the concept of truth. So they're not really rejecting God. Atheists aren't really rejecting God. They're delusional in thinking that they're rejecting God. They actually do believe in God because they believe in objective reality and they do believe in a higher truth. So let's see how he stumbles through this.
Reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists don't know what they're rejecting. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics, like I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion so deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood. Your aim was off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out. But
then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
Well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheist claim that there's no God is a generic claim. In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold, is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they've often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left them with an animus.
But I think that
So his whole claim is that atheists just have a reductive notion of God, but that doesn't that critique doesn't just apply to atheists. That applies to Christians as well, because as far as Jordan Peterson is concerned, Christians also have a reductive notion of God. They also believe that God is has a mind, that God is a person, that God has an interest in human life, and sends directives, sends commands, and God requires worship and this kind of interaction between God and his creation of worship. So that definition is what atheists are rejecting. And Jordan Peterson says that that definition of God, or that understanding of God, is reductive. Actually, God is a more abstract concept, a more abstract principle. If you didn't have a reductive mentality, you would understand that that's actually what God is, what God means.
you have a reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like 3 people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all-powerful, all-perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with the Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion. And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
Well,
like...
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other. The mere fact of communication.
And this is false atheist claim, like everyone has a different notion of God. This is empirically false. If you survey different cultures and you survey children in different cultures, they will give a very similar definition of God as the creator of the universe, God that imbues the universe with a purpose, his creation with a purpose, God who is omniscient, all-powerful, God who is not like a physical body, like we are, like human bodies. God is not material made of matter in the same way that we are, because he's not created. So this is actually a very universal understanding of God. And the cognitive science of religion studies this kind of universal concept of God. As Muslims, we know what this is. We know that this is the fitrah. We know that every human being has been created upon the fitrah, as is referred to in the Quran and Hadith, where every person, and not only people, but also jinn, also angels, also the entire creation, knows that it has a creator and that Allah is the creator, that God is the creator of all that exists, and he's omniscient and he is worthy of worship, that we must worship him. We must be obedient to him. He is the one who gives us everything that we are and we enjoy. Every pleasure that we experience is coming from God. God is the one who has given us all of this, and he is all powerful and he deserves our reverence. These are actually universal intuitions that are found across the board, across space and time. So the atheists claim that no, every person has his own concept of God, and every culture, you have a million different understandings of God. There are a million different gods and theologies. There are variations that we find, but at the ultimate level of who is the creator and what are some of his attributes and what is our relationship supposed to be between us as created human beings and the creator, there you find a lot of universality, a lot of similarity. Atheists don't appreciate this, and so they are caricaturing and strawmanning religion.
Presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And it's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious.
Whoa.
So that's not a real claim. Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now, Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously.
Obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has disagreed historically on, it seems like, even the most benign detail about a book this big. And it seems like you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
That's like a intro to philosophy type of argument that like a first-year student would make. The Bible has no voice. The Bible can't speak. Okay, are you going to really take a radical postmodern approach to the Bible or towards written text? Okay, if that's the case, then does the U.S. Constitution say anything? The U.S. Constitution, there are many interpretations of the U.S. Constitution. There's many interpretations of the legal code, so maybe the legal code doesn't really say anything. Or how about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? There are so many interpretations of that, so why should we assume that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that's taken as the basis of international human rights law, why should we assume that it says anything or it has any substance beyond what you subjectively might read into it? Why should we even take Mein Kampf? Why should we take Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, as having any content? Maybe we can read Mein Kampf as saying that, I actually love the Jewish people. Maybe that's what Hitler was saying. Who are you to tell me otherwise? So this kind of philosophy 101 or, intro to literature, intro to lit studies, argument is you should just keep it to the first year of your undergraduate. Don't bring it to a debate with Jordan Peterson.
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant? Because the alternative claim is that he's good.
I'm saying that we can't know, because we can't talk to those authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
and we also have a short time here, so I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here, and I'd love if we could.
The core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to give you an example of what's being rejected and its complexity. Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
I said I didn't say the. I said
That is possible, yes.
I said
Okay. So despite the fact that Moses is a stellar character and he's had a long and difficult life and can withstand a lot of difficulty and travail, God puts him between two cliffs. So he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable. It's a pinnacle experience, and that people in their finitude have to be shielded from a comprehensive vision of the basis of reality. Well, that's not the God that's defined in that manner, right? It's not a simple personification. It's not a simple old man in the sky. It's something that in its essence is unknowable and overwhelming. And that isn't, in my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting to undermine the story. I mean, it's the same claim, for example, that you're a finite creature and that you face something that in the final analysis is unknowable, and that you have to establish a relationship with it regardless of your inability to perceive or even withstand perceiving the whole. Okay, is there a problem with that?
I mean, the problem is that when we look at, famously, when you've been asked, do you believe in God, the question becomes, what do we mean by God? And in the Bible, it's not even clear the biblical authors know what God is, because Yahweh has historically emerged from an early storm god, a deity that doesn't exhaust the category of deity, and that has changed over the Old Testament. Does God have physicality? Does God not have physicality? It seems like, yes, if you define religion to mean anybody that has an aim, anybody that looks at the unknown, anybody who wants to go from chaos to order is inherently religious, then yes. But also in the same way, I could define atheist as somebody who doesn't dogmatically believe in a religion, or somebody who doesn't regularly attend religious services or belong to a denomination. To help especially the audience kind of like boil this down, there was a lot of words there. That the central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
A central claim.
A central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
No, I said that we were finite and we had to establish a relationship with the infinite.
Yeah, then in that case, then we're all religious, but then I can do the same thing and define one particular element of atheism. It seems like we both.
If God is just the infinite, then within science, there are many who claim, or the consensus at this point is that what exists is infinite, and that we are within one universe in an infinite number of multiverses. So why couldn't reality be considered the infinite? Like, establish a connection with the infinite by doing science, by being like very in touch with nature, going out and touching grass. Like that makes you have a relationship with the infinite. When you reflect that, oh, the matter of the stars is the same matter within my body, so I have a connection with the infinite. Like this type of Neil deGrasse Tyson or Carl Sagan understanding of spirituality. This is basically what Jordan Peterson, or we can interpret Jordan Peterson as making this kind of claim. But that's very different than a Judeo-Christian understanding of God, or any other organized religion of God as the creator, God as being, or in the Christian tradition specifically, God being like a spirit, or God being like a physical person, like the Son of God, the incarnation of God, as a person. Okay, that's not the same concept that Jordan Peterson is describing as an abstract infinite that we cannot perceive fully, that we cannot encapsulate within our minds fully.
Have a reductive view of what the other side looks like, to the point where a conversation seems incoherent, and not just incoherent, but not in the way that the average Christian understands Christianity to be.
Do you have a
Okay,
problem
let's
with...
pause there. Sorry, you've been voted out by
Awesome.
the majority.
Okay, so the atheists sitting around, they can raise a red flag to vote out the person. Like, okay, we want to get someone new sitting in the hot seat. So they raise a red flag, and when the majority are, like, I guess over 10 people raise the red flag, then the person has to leave, and then someone new comes in.
Hey, how's it going?
How
Nice to meet you.
doing? Nice to meet you,
David.
too. David, good to see you.
Tell me everything that you know about the Polynesian deity Lono, L-O-N-O.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not rejecting it.
Do
No
you
more
be-
than I'm
do
rejecting
you believe in
anything
Lono?
that I don't know anything about.
Do you believe in Lono?
I
Do you
fail to
believe
see
that
the
he is a
relevance of
deity
that.
that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono
I'll
is
answer
a
that
being?
question once you...
So this is, again, the typical flying spaghetti monster argument of atheists that we've addressed many times. You can see a full treatment of this, or response to this atheist argument in Genius of Islam episode 2. But basically they're saying, well, us rejecting God is the same as you rejecting Lono, or you rejecting the flying spaghetti monster. It's the same thing. There are so many different gods, and you don't believe in 99% of them. You, in fact, reject every single god except what you believe to be God. So why should you accuse me of having some kind of epistemological deficit, or me not seeing the reality of God, when you're in the same exact boat as me? This is hypocritical. So atheists make this argument, but again, there's no analogy. Like, this is a disanalogy. The flying spaghetti monster, or Lono, or any other Hindu god, or ancient Egyptian god, that's not the same as, or Jupiter, for example, or Zeus. That's not the same as believing in the all-powerful creator that is intuitive. Human beings naturally have an intuition that God exists, and God is the one who created the entire universe and imbued the entire universe with purpose. That is something unique. No one has the intuition that there is a flying spaghetti monster. No one has an intuition. Children, if you ask children, do you feel like the universe is created? Yes or no? They'll say yes. The universe is created. In the same way that people can build and manufacture a car, or build and manufacture a house, the universe, trees, mountains, rivers, those were also built. Those were also created. By who? By who were these things built? By God. This is what children say, and it was studied by Olivera Petrovich in her Oxford study that she published. She published an article, she published a book on this. So children naturally have these types of intuitions about a creator God. The children don't have an intuition about a flying spaghetti monster, or Lono, or Ra. So, and I said Zeus before, but Zeus, I guess, within the Greek tradition is considered like a all-powerful creator God. So maybe Zeus could be considered one of these like a name for the all-powerful creator within Greek mythology. But the point being that this is a straw man argument against theists, against religion.
Answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is quite simple.
I don't understand how Jordan Peterson, as a psychologist, is so ignorant of the cognitive science of religion. Like, this type of research that I'm presenting to you is not like some kind of arcane material that people aren't aware of in the mainstream. Like, this is fully fleshed out academic research with dozens, hundreds of papers and books on this topic of the cognitive science of religion. And the religious intuitions that people have. People have a religious intuition that God exists. God created created us and created the universe for a purpose. We all have souls that will last beyond death. When we die, there is an afterlife because our souls will continue to persist, to exist. Like, these are the kinds of intuitions that humans universally have. They're not specific to one specific religion. And Islam has the explanation for this. It's because of the fitrah. But in the cognitive science of religion, they say this is biological. Like, this is how people's biologies work, how their minds work. But Jordan Peterson seems to be completely ignorant or clueless about this entire field of psychology.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's formulated accurately.
Do you believe that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described. You already insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
I think in order for your argument to be true, in order for it to be true that we atheists don't understand what we're rejecting, then you need to also apply that to yourself and to Christians and to Muslims and to any other person on this earth, where if you don't understand what you're rejecting the belief in, then you can't reject the belief in it. That's the implication of your claim.
I didn't say that I rejected the belief in Lona. I said I didn't know who Lono was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked you several times and you haven't, but let me get to my even greater point. Mm-hmm. You're saying atheists don't understand what religion is or what God is in order to be able to reject it fully or completely. We have someone over here who studied it in their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies, specialty in Christianity and Mediterranean traditions. And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than believers.
That's because they're more religious than they think they are.
Why wouldn't you say, as a response to that yeah, they're obsessed. They're obsessed with religion. They have molded their identity in opposition to a belief system or a community or a global community of believers within Christianity or Islam. And so they are defining themselves. Their self-identity has to be in opposition. And that requires them to be more focused on that tradition than just an average believer. That's the type of analysis that you can give, as opposed to say, oh, they're more religious. Actually, they're more religious than a believer, even though they reject God. So this is Hamza Yusuf actually made a similar comment like this regarding atheists. Maybe it was just a joking comment. But he said also that atheists are, I think, more religious, or atheists are more interested in God than even the believers. So it's a throwaway line, but
okay, you can.
They're concerned with deep matters, and one of the defining characteristics of someone who's oriented in a religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
Okay.
In fact, it's virtually definitional.
Right, but they also have to identify with a religious tradition and accept the foundational stories that go along with that.
Well, that would mean more that they're sectarian than that they're religious. And most people, for example, in the United States, deny that they're religious, but accept that they're spiritual.
Let's pause there.
So if you believe that your religion is the exclusive truth, that is sectarian, according to Jordan Peterson. But every single religion has within it this kind of principle. Not every single, most religions, most of the major religions have this principle that they are the exclusive truth. And that if you reject their exclusive truth claims and you reject their tradition, then you are falling into falsehood. You are going astray, that you have adopted a false understanding of the world. So all of these religions are the major religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. They're exclusivist. They're exclusivist. But Jordan Peterson is characterizing that as sectarianism. No, actually, to be religious means to just accept this abstract reality of God, the infinite reality of God. And that is not limited to one tradition. That is not limited to one book or one set of rituals or one set of norms. So he's redefining religion in a way to argue against atheists, but he's really throwing Judaism, Christianity, and religion under the bus.
You've been voted out by the majority.
Aha! Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
Good, how
What's
are you?
your name?
I'm Greg, nice to meet you.
Greg.
Okay, so I feel like you're getting at this idea of polysemy, where we have multiple related meanings for a word, right? Like, for example, a famous painting can be emotionally moving in that it changes my emotional state. And when I was on the highway coming here to the studio, I was physically moving. I was changing my position. If I said, I believe the Mona Lisa is very moving, and you said, you don't really understand what you're saying, it's nailed to the wall, I would say that you're the one who doesn't understand what I'm saying, not the other way around. And the way that relates to this is there are many concepts of God, and I'll admit, I find a lot of what you say about that interesting. I'm familiar with it. The idea of this kind of Jungian hierarchical thing, or as a metaphor or a symbol, or the kind of, atheist, materialist, literalist idea of a agentic, omnipotent, omniscient being that intervenes in reality, right? So when I'm saying that I reject the concept of God, I'm aware of these other definitions of God, but I think that when we use words, we tend to only imply one meaning at a time. So the same way that I would say the Mona Lisa is moving emotionally, but I would not say it's moving physically. I would say I reject the concept of God in this very literal way. But
What literal way?
the way that God is this omniscient, omnipotent, agentic, supernatural being that sent his son down and has, caused miracles and all these things like that. The idea of God is
Do you think that there's an underlying unity of things?
Could you explain that question?
So the atheist is saying, look, again, God, as the religious people define it and as atheists define it, is an agent who has knowledge, he has a will, he has a power, he has an interest in the way humans live their lives. It's not this kind of abstract infinity or this higher principle. And Jordan Peterson immediately tries to bring him back and say, no, but don't you believe in unity? Don't you believe in this underlying unity of all things? So that's the only way that he can respond. He can't actually deny and say that, no, God is not an agent. No, God is not this personal spirit that you have a relationship with, a personal mind that you worship, that you love or you revere. He can't deny it because that will just out him. That will just it'll expose what he actually is. So he has to keep obfuscating, saying, no, this is an abstract. Don't you believe in an abstract unity? If you do, then you believe in God. You think you're an atheist, but yet you actually believe in God in the way that I define God.
Well, scientists, for example, believe that science unifies in a comprehensive theory. Do you, yes, no, or that there are multiple competing truths? Those are the options. Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
I know that, for example, like in physics, people are looking for like a theory of everything.
And why do you think they're doing that?
It's interesting, it's helpful.
But they also believe that there's an underlying unity to things.
In a sense, yeah, like the material world and time and space are probably governed by universal laws and principles.
Partly that, yes, yes, but that the same thing might extend to a broader domain that would include imagination and value.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Well, I'm trying to define God, the God that I don't think atheists do a very good job of defining. Here's another question for you. What do you think guides you in your determination of whether or not what you're saying to me is true?
Can we go back? Can we stay on what we were talking about?
We are.
Okay.
You're just uncomfortable with the question.
No, I feel like you're just kind of throwing different spaghetti at the wall.
I'm not.
Okay.
I asked you a very specific question. What is it that you think guides you when you're talking to me to help you determine whether what you say is true?
Logic, memory, reasoning, sensory information.
How do you distinguish that from being governed by something that's false?
An interesting question.
How do you know the difference when you speak between what's true and what's false? So you can imagine.
Right?
Like, this is the type of argument that you use against a postmodernist. But this atheist is not a postmodernist. This atheist does accept truth, does accept that, well, there is some reality, there is a objective, physical, material reality. That he does accept that. He just doesn't accept that that should be defined as God. He just doesn't accept that that's the God that Christianity is advocating or is teaching about in the Bible. But Jordan Peterson uses this type of argument against a postmodernist, someone who says that or a solipsist, a postmodernist. There is no reality. Everything is a social construction. Meaning is just invented by us as human beings. There isn't no meaning or veridical behind the veil. Like, that's the kind of postmodern reasoning that he is. This line of questioning is supposed to debunk. Like, well, if we are able to communicate, and I'm speaking to you and you understand what I'm saying to you, then that presupposes that we have a shared basis of reality, or that there is some kind of meaning that goes beyond my mind and your mind. So it cannot be purely subjective. It cannot be purely a social construction. That's what Jordan Peterson is driving at, but it's against the wrong opponent. These atheists aren't necessarily post-structuralists or followers of Derrida or anything like that.
I can infer.
From what principles?
So, and what are you getting at?
I'm getting at the fact that your conscience guides you. Is that reasonable?
Conscience is defined by my empathy and my reason, or my foundational.
Define it any way you want.
Okay, so that's how I'm defining my conscience. Is my my conscience is my sense of
right and wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Where does that come from?
I would say that comes from an evolved capacity to empathize and a recognition of the benefits of engaging with and nurturing that capacity. And then that empathy is constrained and guided by reason, right? Like, for example, I am driving down the highway, there's a kitten in the road. I'm gonna empathetically feel, oh my God, I wanna save the kitten, but then reasonably, like, I'm gonna get hit by a car, right? So that's sort of the process through which I make ethical decisions.
Okay,
is empathy constrained by reason.
Do you think that people can differ in their response to something empathically?
Yeah.
Is there a mediating principle that can tell you one person who's empathic and another person who's empathic that disagree, who's correct?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we'd have to, talk it out, right? Mm-hmm. We do that in real life all the time when we have, whether that's a discussion with a friend about the right thing to do in a situation, whether that's a policy discussion about law, right? That's where we can converse with each other, think about things, explain our perspectives, and then kind of reach a conclusion, right? That I think that we do that all the time.
So Elijah, the prophet Elijah, defined God in the Old Testament as the voice of conscience within.
Okay.
That's a definition.
So you're saying
that's false. Elijah doesn't define God as the voice of conscience. Elijah is saying in the Bible that God's commands are knowable through the conscience, that human beings have the capacity to know right and wrong and what God loves and what he hates through this capacity known as the conscience. Not that God is the conscience. So Jordan Peterson is just muddling up the Bible here.
By that definition of God, I see this kind of goes back to where I'm saying initially.
I'm not defining it. Elijah defined it.
Okay, so as Elijah defines God.
It's defined that way in Jonah too.
Okay, so as
Cardinal Newman also defined it that way.
As I'm sure you know many people who've defined it that way, and it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm just pointing out to you how God is defined in the Old Testament.
All right. So to respond to that, I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God. And that goes back to my kind of opening
Then how
statement.
do we specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, again, it goes back to my example of the Mona Lisa.
I'm defining God as conscience.
Okay, so that's interesting, but then you're kind of expanding the meaning of God.
No, I'm not. That's how it's defined in the Old Testament.
Okay, so
in Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So
it's completely ridiculous. Like in the Old Testament, God is giving commands. God is giving you commands, the 10 Commandments, for example. God is giving you requirements to sacrifice at the temple, to make animal sacrifices, burnt offerings at the temple. God is giving extremely complex rules for purity in the Old Testament. God is giving very complex rules when it comes to finances and money lending and usury. This is not the human conscience. The conscience doesn't tell you, like, oh yeah, when it comes to animal sacrifice, you have to do this sacrifice specifically at the temple on this specific day, and you should not boil a child in its mother's milk, and that's not coming from the human conscience. So he has to just run roughshod over the Bible and distort what the Bible is actually saying. This is not a service to Judaism or Christianity. It's not a service to the Bible. And he is presenting himself as these are deep, profound insights about the true meaning of the Bible. This is going to misguide any kind of Christian or anyone who is actually serious about Christianity. If they follow Jordan Peterson, they're going to be misguided about the nature of the Bible, about the nature of God, about the nature of religion.
It's not whoever. Okay. Elijah is one of the major Old Testament prophets. Right? He's equal in stature to Moses. Okay. So it's not arbitrary.
That's also dubious. How is Elijah equal in status to Moses in the Old Testament? That's quite a outrageous claim in itself.
Right. So that is interesting, but it's not relevant to the context with which I am using the term God.
It's directly relevant. Atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. You accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old Testament.
I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
In what way?
Because
yeah, that's a good assessment. He is being disingenuous because he's pretending like he doesn't know what everyone means when they talk about God. Whether they're atheists, whether they're Christians or Jews or Muslims, he's pretending like he doesn't actually. No. Christians actually think, and the Bible says that God is the conscience, the human conscience, and then God. Oh, this story from Moses. God is infinite, an infinite reality. And this is how the religious believe that what God actually is. This is intellectually disingenuous.
Again, I asked you if you believe that conscience guided you.
You just asked me a question and then you stopped me from answering it. In this setting, you understand the way I am using the term God and belief.
Not in the least. I don't understand how you're using it in the least. That's why I'm trying to define it. My definition of God as conscience is a lot more precise and oriented than your definition of the God that you hypothetically disbelieve in.
It's irrelevant to the fault lines of this debate.
How is it irrelevant?
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheists, God, belief, not belief,
I don't care about common parlance. I'm trying to get to something fundamental.
I think your point is irrelevant to the way that people tend to use these words. Your point that there are these polysemous ideas of God.
I didn't make that point. You did.
I did. Well, I
made a specific point that God was associated with conscience.
I just feel like you kind of retreat into this semantic fog.
I'm not retreating.
Right, you didn't say God is associated with the conscience. You said God is literally the conscience. And you claim that the Bible says this. The Bible teaches this. Elijah does.
Retreating at all. I'm advancing, sir. You are retreating.
All right. Well, it was very nice to meet you. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. It's very brave of you to do this.
Thank you.
My next claim is that morality and purpose cannot be found.
All right. Before we go on to this second claim, again, like this is like the stupidest way to debate atheists. The stupidest way to debate atheists is say, oh, you reject God, but God is just the infinite objective reality. God is just truth. God is just the conscience. And you clearly accept that there's a conscience. You accept that there's an infinite reality, the universe. You accept that there's truth, the concept of truth. So you're not actually rejecting God. Checkmate, atheist. Checkmate. This is quite idiotic. And as idiotic as these atheists are, like these Redditors are, even they're baffled that this is the kind of argument that they're having to contend with.
Found within science.
Right? Morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
What is up, Mr. Canada?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
What's
How are
your
you?
name?
Brian. I think it's interesting that you say that morality and purpose can't be found in science. Actually,
No, within science.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Purpose, I actually grant you, because purpose is subjective, right? Unless you want to boil it down to the purpose of life is just to procreate, right? Sure, whatever. Morality is actually something that we do see. We actually have examples of Neanderthals and older individuals found in a tribe, missing an arm, missing teeth, still alive somehow in his 40s, 50s, right? Typically, you're a Neanderthal, you can't eat, you can't hunt, you die, right? But we know that members of his tribe were taking care of him, right? So we know that at some level, early in our evolutionary history, we actually developed altruism. We have examples of chimpanzees who actually have a basic understanding of fairness, right? If you give a chimpanzee 2 grapes, right, and his buddy gets 3, right? He actually freaks out, right? But you give both chimps 3 grapes and they're good. We have examples of parrots.
Except for the greedy chimps.
Except for the greedy chimps.
They want 4 grapes.
They want 4 grapes. You know, those do exist, right? But we have similar examples where we do animal tests, right? And
So morality is intrinsic.
I think
So it precedes science.
that actually
right?
a better way to define it would be that social animals, which we are, right,
Yeah.
require some level of morality or
Into what? I'm not disagreeing.
Sure.
Why do they require that?
Because it's the only way that social groups can actually survive, right?
That's my point with
Sure.
regards to science. Thank you very much.
Is that
Precisely the point that you just made, that science has to exist within a moral framework that isn't in itself scientific.
how's that not scientific?
Well, because it's not derived from the scientific process, as you just
It
indicated.
doesn't need
by
to derive from
pointing
the
to-
scientific process.
Well,
It's
hang
the
on,
fact that
hang on a sec.
we are social animals, so we need that to exist as a group.
I
right?
agree, but
Sure.
you pointed to the morality.
Even that is a normative claim, to say that we need something to survive. Survival is inexorably normative. Why should you? Normative just means like should or ought. Anytime you say something should happen or something ought to happen, you're making a evaluative, normative, moral claim. So to say, like a lot of these atheists, they try to get around this dilemma by saying that, well, we have evolved this kind of social altruism, and that's the basis of morality. It's something that is evolved. Well, why do you need to abide by this evolved morality, is the response that you give. And then the atheist responds and says, well, we need it. If it's evolved, it's something that we need to survive. But that in and of itself is a normative claim. Why should we survive? The fact that you are claiming that we should, that we ought to survive, we ought to perpetuate ourselves, is in and of itself a moral claim, is a normative claim. So you have snuck in your normative moral assumptions into science, into the evolutionary process, or your explanation or your description of the evolutionary process. You've smuggled it in, but that's not inherent to the science. It's not inherent to evolution or any kind of biological process. Morality, normative claims are immaterial. They are unempirical. They cannot be studied through a microscope. They cannot be studied through a telescope. They are not scientific. And so I don't know how any atheists can get out of this. And none of their explanations are very plausible. Like, you can give an evolutionary explanation. Well, this is what we should do because this is what we need to survive. Well, that you are smuggling in morality into that very statement. That doesn't come from the science. That comes from your evaluation or your morality that human beings should survive or should perpetuate or should pass on their genes. No, maybe someone disagrees. No, we shouldn't actually perpetuate our genes. We are a blight on the earth. The human race is a virus, and we need to all be exterminated. That's actually what I'm going for, and that's why I reject altruism. I reject moral imperatives like do not kill, do not steal, do not harm others. I reject all of these. I don't actually agree with the harm principle. I don't agree that we shouldn't harm people for no reason. I think we should harm people for no reason. I gain pleasure from harming people and making people suffer. I get pleasure from that. And if you give me an evolutionary argument that, oh, actually, this is contrary to your survival, I say, well, I don't want to survive. I actually don't want to survive. I want to go extinct. I want my entire genetic line to go extinct. And there's nothing that you can point to scientifically. There's nothing that you can point to materially or empirically that would convince me otherwise. You are simply making a category error by conflating what is empirical, what is physical, material, with what is normative, what is moral, what is ought. This is the is-ought distinction that anyone who studied philosophy will be familiar with. But the atheists really don't really get past this dilemma. And I can't tell, like, is this goes contrary to the first claim, because the first claim, Jordan Peterson was saying that the atheists, they are rejecting something, namely God, that they don't actually understand. But this is taking a different angle. Morality and purpose cannot be found within science. Okay, so if morality and purpose cannot be found within science, then where is it found? Where can it be found? Is it found in the Bible? Is it found in a religious tradition? Is it found in acts of worship? Jordan Peterson, as we'll see, is not going to claim that. Instead, he's going to claim that, well, it's utilitarian, pursuing good, pursuing higher values, voluntarily sacrificing yourself for a higher purpose. That's what morality is. That's just liberalism. He's just bringing in this concept of sacrifice, and he's bringing in this concept of voluntarily sacrificing. That's smuggling in liberalism. Morality is not found in science, it's found in liberalism, and an atheist could accept that. An atheist could accept that. So how is this really a point against the atheists?
Morality of Neanderthals to the morality of chimpanzees. They didn't derive that from science.
They don't need to. That's not how that works.
That's my point.
Science explains it. So
No, science doesn't explain morality.
It doesn't explain how social animals would need to be.
Science doesn't give you compelling reasons to be a moral person. That's the point. Science can give you a reason to believe that there are atoms. Science can give you reasons for believing that the sun is one star within a galaxy of 400 billion stars. Science can give you reasons. How does it give you reasons? Through evidence that are obtained empirically through scientific investigation, through scientific experimentation. Science gives you reasons to change your beliefs. Science is an epistemological channel. But morality, again, is a separate category. There is no scientific evidence that you can show me that will give me a good reason not to hurt someone. That will give me a good reason not to steal from someone, not to lie from someone. There's not a scientific result or empirical reality or physical formula or property that you can point to that will give me a reason, let alone a good reason, not to act immorally. They're bumbling up the whole topic, bungling it rather, but that's what they're trying to. That's what they're walking around.
Well, that's a complicated question.
But we see it though.
Yeah, but explaining the evolution of morality and explaining morality itself aren't the same thing.
Okay, so you're asking why does this happen?
Yes, that's more accurate.
Because we're social animals. And we
yeah,
need
but there's
to be...
more to it than that.
Is there?
Sure. For example, so we're moral animals that have a sense of the future.
Sure.
Okay, that makes us unique. And that structures our morality.
No, actually, there are other animals that can predict the future. Or
Not
predict
really.
the future. No, tigers. Actually, there was a tiger at the SF Zoo that killed somebody. And so
Hunting
actually,
animals.
No. Kids threw shit at the tiger. The tiger actually plotted its escape, and it found the kids.
I'm not saying that animals can't think.
Okay.
No, but they can
pause here.
perceive the future. That's what I'm saying.
Well-
Voted out by the majority.
Thank you, man.
Good man. Yeah.
Jordan Peterson, how you
How
doing?
are you doing, man?
My name's Luke. Nice to meet
Good
you.
to see you, Luke.
So your claim that morality and purpose can only be found in science is a little shaky because I think that your claim is really being framed to be morality and purpose can only be found in religion. Is that how you're kind of framing it?
I would say that the domain of religion is the domain of morality and purpose. Yes, exactly. And also that science is actually structured, at least in part technically, to eliminate such considerations from its purview a priori. Right? That's why we define science as value-free. But that has to be wrong because scientists have to prioritize their attention towards something before they can even engage in observation. And that act of prioritization of attention is a value-predicated act. And so I can continue. There's all sorts of things we have to assume about science before it can take place.
Okay, so what I'm specifically...
Yeah, I mean, this is a simple point, is that scientists have to prioritize what they study. Scientists have to abide by certain normative values, certain codes of ethics, for example. Scientists have to have a sense of purpose in their ability to do science. They have to have a concept of truth as being something valuable. These are all values. They're all normative. They are a part of morality and moral principles. So this is just a simple point, that the scientific enterprise has a normative component. And how is that relevant to a debate with atheists? It's only if you are framing it in a way, as this atheist points out, that are you saying that we only can get our norms from religion? If not, then how is this relevant to a debate on religion or on Christianity? This point that you're making. So this is why these atheists are confused. They have a hard time trying to get a foothold to be able to argue against Peterson.
Specifically pointing out here is about religion in particular, since you yourself are a Christian, right?
People debate about that, and I generally don't discuss it publicly.
Okay, I understand.
He doesn't debate being a Christian publicly. He has lectures upon lectures talking about the Old Testament, talking about religious belief, about the conscience, about God, about the stories of the Bible. Like this is majority of his advocacy. The majority of his speaking is on the basis of these themes, but he doesn't talk about being a Christian.
And me, myself, I am a former young earth creationist fundamentalist.
Oh, yeah.
So I have experience in this. I used to run a TikTok channel directed about apologetics about the Bible, specifically in this type of facet with morality, evolution and such, and going back and forth with that. So in the Bible, it talks a lot about slavery, right?
Yes.
Yes. So in that, it teaches you how to take care of a slave. Rather than saying slavery is wrong, I think it should say that.
It says that in the story of Moses.
It says slavery is incorrect. It says it's immoral.
That's why Moses leads his people away from slavery.
But why does...
That's crazy. The problem that the Bible has with slavery is not with slavery as a concept, but that the children of Israel were enslaved. So as soon as the children of Israel make their exodus out of Pharaoh's enslavement, they immediately go and they start enslaving. They go to war, after 40 years in the desert, wandering in the desert. Then they're going to war, and there are commandments that are being given on war, harem warfare, taking slaves, taking concubines. These rules are given by God in the Bible. And if you're a Christian, of course, you believe that God is Jesus Christ, so it's Jesus Christ commanding enslavement and very detailed rules on slavery, very detailed rules on taking captives, including children, young girls. So this is but Peterson is saying, oh, Moses is against, like, the story of Moses is proof that the Bible is against slavery. This is a farce.
Does the Bible predicate and tell people exactly how to take care of a slave? Isn't that immoral? Wouldn't you say that culturally we've evolved as a species, as he said earlier about empathy?
Yeah, I would say that the reason we evolved, so to speak, away from slavery was because the West was founded on Judeo-Christian morality and the presumption that every person was made in the image of God. And so slavery itself became immoral, and that was established by Protestant Christians in the UK, who then convinced the UK government for 200 years to go to war on slavery.
And wouldn't you say that this is about the cultural evolution of human...
If slavery was banned because of Christianity or because of the Bible, then why did some of the most religious Christian societies, like in Latin America or in certain African countries like Ethiopia, why didn't they ban slavery? Ethiopia didn't ban slavery until 1942. And so some of these very Christian countries, religious Christian countries, Bible-abiding countries, they didn't abolish slavery at the same time as in the UK and in Europe. They came much later. So if the common factor in opposing slavery is Christianity, then why don't we see this throughout the world? And in fact, some of the most Christian countries in the world, they held on to slavery into the 20th century. Over 100 years after it was banned in the UK. In the UK, or in Europe, let's say, and in America, it's liberalism. It is adopting liberalism and this notion of equality that led to an ideological opposition to slavery. That didn't come from the Bible. It didn't come from Judaism. It didn't come from Moses, who is commanding slavery in the Bible, in the Old Testament. It's coming from the abolishing of slavery is coming from this adoption of the liberal notion of equality of human beings, number one. And secondly, the technological advancement that the world was going through, the Industrial Revolution, that made slavery unnecessary to win wars. You can win wars without slavery. Therefore, what a coincidence. Right as the technology appears, the Industrial Revolution happens, you no longer need slaves. Oh, magically now you've understood that slavery is immoral. Now! Right at the same time. Just what a miracle of a coincidence that now we know that slavery is wrong. And slavery has been wrong this whole time. It just took us the Industrial Revolution, where slaveries are no longer needed to win wars, that we've discovered this. Wow. And then you back project it onto the Bible. The Bible is very pro-slavery. The Bible is extremely pro-slavery, including the New Testament, by the way. The New Testament also tells slaves to obey their masters. So this is really a hilarious type of cope that we see from Christians, that they want to take credit for abolishing slavery. No, it was liberalism and it was technological advancements. And if in the future there is some kind of regression technologically, slavery is going to be coming back with a vengeance. Slavery is going to be back on the menu, boys, because the technology no longer exists to win wars without slavery. Slavery is a requirement, especially if you don't have the technology to wage wars. You have to resort to slavery. And that's why every single religion, every single culture, every single advanced civilization had slaves and promoted slavery through conquest, where you are expanding your territory and you are conquering people and taking them as slaves. You're promoting slavery and you're regulating slavery. Every single religion and culture, and no matter how you try to cope with that, no matter how you try to rewrite history, it's still there. Like, that's still the obvious reality, and it looks ridiculous. It looks ridiculous when you say, "Oh, this is the most evil thing. This is something that any person of conscience has to reject." So you're saying that all of human history, like, people were evil? People were evil monsters who didn't have the moral sense that was magically discovered 200 years ago? How does that make any sense? How can we reconcile that? Were people morally blind for the entirety of human history until just 200 years ago? What happened? Like, what created this moral awakening, this sudden realization? And you can't, as a religious person, you can't have that perspective, because it destroys tradition. It destroys the concept of, well, the Bible was revealed in the past and it promotes slavery. The Quran was revealed in the past. It promotes and regulates slavery. Hindu texts, the Vedas, promote slavery, caste slavery especially. Buddhism, all of these religions. And even secular. Look at America. Look at the founding fathers. They were slave owners. So you have to throw all of that in the trash. And when you do that, you undermine your own religion, you undermine your religious text, your religious tradition. And Jordan Peterson obviously has no problem doing that. But even some of the more, the actual Christians do this as well. Actual Christians, Bible-believing Christians. I've debated them. I debate someone like David Wood. I debate someone like whoever. And they're fine with throwing their Bible under the bus, throwing past Christians under the bus. And that's why their religions have been reformed beyond recognition.
Humans in general, rather than just Christianity.
No, I think it's the flowering of the ideas that were embedded in the biblical texts across long spans of time.
I feel like this is just humans editing based on the cultural evolution of
What do you mean
morality.
by just?
Just?
Yeah, just humans.
Well, humans.
Editing.
Well,
Yeah.
based on culture and history, right? We get better.
They did do it based on culture and history, but
Yes.
culture and history have their foundations too. So
Well, yeah, but we're talking about slavery. So many people bolstered it based on the
everyone,
Bible. Based on the Bible. They
that's
looked at
much
it and
less
they
true.
justified it in the United States and the Deep South. They justified slavery
Yeah, but
based
the
on
main
the Bible.
thrust of Protestant thought in particular was stringently
Yes.
against slavery,
Which-
and it was about the only movement in the history
Yes.
of the human race that
Yes.
had an anti-slavery direction.
Which was driven by humans and their
That's
understanding
one
of
way of
morality.
looking at it. Well, it depends.
It's the same with women's suffrage. I mean, women's in the patriarchy.
What do you mean it was driven by humans? Humans drove slavery too.
Yes, exactly.
So there's no argument there. If slavery and anti-slavery were both driven by humans, what does your claim that they were driven by humans have to do with it?
evolving
There is a
morality
specific-
based on the culture that within the society that they live in.
Okay,
So
fine.
with
I think
women's
that did
suffrage as
happen.
well is a very similar topic in the Bible. There are denominations in Christianity, such as Pentecostal movement,
Uh-huh.
which do bolster women to be pastors, right? Which I think that's a great thing to do. But most like to disregard
Where do you
women.
think the idea that human beings were sufficiently equal to all vote and not be slaves came from?
Humans.
Yeah, but so did the idea of slavery.
So did the
that's
idea of God.
fine.
How can he deny? So he's trying to deny that the banning of slavery was a global human achievement. He said that no, this is the Bible. The Bible as a text leads us to reject slavery because the Bible advocates equality. Okay, well, can you point to the verse? Can you point to the story within the Bible? Can you give us some kind of reference? Because here's a long list of pro-slavery verses in the Bible. Here's a long list in the Old Testament about God preferring the children of Israel over all other nations. God choosing specifically the children of Israel as having a special place, being the chosen people in which he has given a covenant, the covenant with Abraham. They have inherited. So they're a special people in the sight of God. Oh, this leads to equality. This leads to, according to Jordan Peterson, this is the value of equality that comes from the Bible. So this is completely delusional. And who are the biggest followers of the Bible today? Oh, is it the Orthodox Jews, the religious Jews? Oh, what are the Orthodox Jews doing these days? Are they really promoting equality for all? Really? Have you checked the news? Have you checked the news of what Israel, the only Jewish state, is actually doing? They're on the forefront of equality, right? And peace for all human beings as equal members of the human race. It's of course the Jews, of course. There's no doubt about it. Of course, it's Israel. Every day on our feed, we see how much Israel cares about the equality of all human beings, especially the Palestinians and the Palestinian children. We see that. That's coming from the Bible. That's coming from the Bible. So this is such a outrageous claim that the banning of slavery comes from the Bible because the Bible teaches that all human beings are equal. This is just like a cope. This is Christianity trying to adopt the achievements of liberalism, the quote unquote achievements of liberalism, because they like everyone in the modern world, unfortunately, has adopted the liberal claims, the liberal myths that liberalism actually is the best regime of human happiness. Liberalism is human salvation on this earth, and it does maximize human happiness. It does maximize human pleasure. Liberalism does bring the fulfillment of human beings on this earth. People have bought into this myth. They cannot critique it. And if you've bought into that worldview, you've adopted that paradigm, then you start molding your religious tradition in the image of that liberal paradigm. And then you start even going a step further and you're saying that, well, this liberalism, this idea of equality and freedom and banning slavery, women's suffrage, giving them the right to vote, all of this actually is found in the Bible. It's actually found in the Vedas. It's actually found in the Quran. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the first feminist. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the first social justice advocate. So we see this kind of cheap move, this cheap line from all of these religions. And atheists are correct to say that this is bunk, this is nonsense, like you're taking credit for something that is completely undeserved. You can't attribute liberalism. Liberalism came from atheists and deists, people who were explicitly trying to put the Bible in the trash. They're explicitly, that was their goal, to put religion in the trash, to move away from the superstition and the metaphysical claims of religion. That's what these liberal Enlightenment thinkers, that was their goal, to put as religion as something behind them, because humanity must progress. Humanity must move beyond and adopt new moral principles, not the old biblical principles that lead to the Dark Ages. Humanity needs to progress by adopting new technologies, by adopting science. The Enlightenment was a anti-religious movement. These principles of freedom and equality and tolerance, these were founded on an anti-religious motivation. And when you look at the Enlightenment thinkers, they make plenty of anti-biblical statements, anti-religious anti-God statements. And the most religious among them were deists. They said that, well, God is like the supreme watchmaker. God has only created the universe like a clock, and he allows it to run without intervening, without interfering, without any concern. God has no concern for our personal lives. God doesn't command us to do this or that. God is impersonal, an impersonal, unmoved mover in the Aristotelian sense. And that's what God is. These are deists. That's the most religious of the Enlightenment thinkers. Other Enlightenment thinkers are complete atheists. They have animosity towards God. But then Christians, 200 years later, are saying, no, these values come from the Bible. This is why Judeo-Christianity is so unique for human evolution and for our current civilization, the progress of our current civilization. Because they're not intelligent enough, or they're not reflective enough to think that, well, is liberalism really that good of a thing? Is liberalism, this philosophical liberalism, this concept of equality, this concept of pursuing maximum pleasure, this utilitarian pursuit of happiness at all other costs, prioritizing liberty, freedom, and equality above all else, is this really a good thing? Is this really an achievement for humankind? Is nonstop pursuit of technological and scientific advancement, is that actually good for human beings? Is that actually going to secure our future? No, we can't ask those kinds of questions. Jordan Peterson can't ask those kinds of questions. A lot of these Christians, so-called intellectuals, they can't ask these kinds of questions. It's just assumed. It's just assumed, of course, freedom and equality, these are good values. Banning slavery, this is good. Endless pursuit of technology, this is great. This is how humanity is going to escape the superstitions of the religious Dark Ages. Like these myths are just assumed. They're never challenged. That's my problem. They're never challenged. They're never critiqued. As soon as you start challenging them, as soon as you start destroying these idols, these myths, these liberal myths, and you start pointing out that actually, not only is it not a good thing, not only is liberalism and techno-capitalism, not only are they not good things, they're actually leading to the destruction of the human race, the annihilation of the human race, and human beings are going to be extinct. As we know them, they're going to be extinct if this continues, rather than pointing something like that out, or when you point this out, then you start to appreciate religion. Not religion as Jordan Peterson defines it. Like Jordan Peterson defines religion as just liberal atheism with a cross put on it. That's how Jordan Peterson defines religion. Just take liberal atheism and put a cross on it, and that's Christianity. That's religion according to Jordan Peterson. You have these liberal Muslims doing the same thing. Islam is just liberal atheism, scientific liberal atheism, but we put a hijab on it and we put a kufi on it, and it memorizes Quran. That's all that Islam actually is. Jews do the same thing. Hindus do the same thing. No, that's not what the religion that I'm talking about. I'm talking about traditional religion. I'm talking about reading the Quran, as the revelation from God, commandments from God, as exemplified by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last prophet in a long line of prophets that the Creator has sent. Religion in the tradition of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 1400 years of practicing Islam as God has commanded it for humanity. That's the religion that I'm talking about. Not liberal atheism with a hijab on it, with a cross on it, with a kufi on it, with a yarmulke on it. That's not the religion that I'm talking about. That's what Jordan Peterson has to preach, because this is another example of preaching to people's desires. People's desires, their whims, desires, prejudices, their ahwa are molded and structured on the basis of this liberal atheistic paradigm. So if you want to cater to that, if you want to cater to those whims and those biases, you have to just reinforce those beliefs in equality, those beliefs in women's empowerment, those beliefs in non-stop technological advancement, so that we can get better and better products. We can enjoy better and better products and enjoy life with less toil, with less work, with more pleasure, with more enjoyment and entertainment. These are all great things. These and what is going to give us these pleasures? It's not religion. It's not reading your book. It's not following these rituals, this worship. That's not how you get it. You get it by becoming a liberal atheist. Fine, you don't want to be a full-blown atheist, then just be a liberal atheist in all your beliefs and values, but just, believe in this abstract concept of God as a higher principle, believe in your norms, and believe in God as the conscience, as your own human conscience, believe in morality as a kind of utilitarianism, what Jordan Peterson is preaching. This is just catering to people's liberal whims and desires and biases.
Fine, but what's your point? Like, you're not making an argument. You're just saying all thoughts come from humans, regardless of the thoughts.
It's not driven by a higher power. It's driven on our experiences as humans, which is what is best for all people.
Is it driven by conscience?
It could be. Which conscience is also something that has evolved over time. And I think that's something that does evolve in morality and empathy.
Okay, I don't understand the point that you're making.
My point is that God influenced slavery. People looked at the Bible and went, this is moral because God says so. Just like women's suffrage.
There's lots
and just like homosexuality.
All human societies were slave owning. So you can't blame that on the Bible.
If humanity...
You can't... All human societies were slave owning, so you can't blame it on the Bible. But the Bible can take credit for emancipation. So everything good we can credit to the Bible, and the bad things, well, you can't blame the Bible because everyone was doing it. This is outrageous. And he also later in the video talks about violence. The violence in the Bible. Actually, we'll go to that clip if I can remember where it is. But he blames humanity. He says, well, all human societies were violent, therefore you can't blame the Bible.
decided.
Oh, wait, address that first.
What, about
All
slavery?
human societies were slavers. So you can't blame that on the Bible.
Well, you can say it bolstered it.
Well, not if you look at the broad sweep of history, because it was the Protestant Christians
Based
in
on
the
their
UK.
interpretation of the Bible,
It was the Protestant Christians.
which evolves over time.
Let's pause there. You've been voted out by the majority.
All right. Well, it was great talking
Yeah,
with you,
nice
sir.
talking to you, too.
Yes.
Dr. Peterson?
Good to see you, man.
Pleasure.
What's your name?
Brian. So the first thing I would like to say is I would like to engage in this discussion in a symbiotic manner. I would not like to engage where there is one clear winner and one clear loser. Emotions are activated and it ultimately comes about ego. So I'm just saying I'm really trying to understand your position, and I would just like you to really try to understand my position.
Deal.
Okay, sounds good. With that, if you're saying that morality and purpose cannot come from science, is the opposite of that true, that morality and purpose can only come from God?
That's a way of defining it, yes.
Okay.
That's right, that's good. So I would say that with regard to the first claim, say, atheists don't understand.
This guy's
what they're-
boring.
How you doing?
That guy is boring. He just rehashes the same issues that we talked about.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I guess since you said morality and purpose cannot be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences would be considered within science, sure. But I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that a God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians like prescribe themselves. So I guess
How is that relevant to this claim?
you're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
What typical Christians?
yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an
How
all-knowing.
about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He's a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
So this is just the meme that came out of his conversation with Muhammad Hijab. Like, do you believe in an all-powerful God? What do you mean by believe? What do you mean by believe? So this is... He's still using the same lines. He's still using the same... He hasn't found a better answer to this very pointed question. He can't even affirm that he believes in God. Clearly, he's advocating for this abstract, universal definition of God as conscience, or God as the objective reality, or God as truth. So clearly he believes in that, but he also wants to question, what does believe mean? What do you even mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if
What's
you
a belief?
believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
So this is like fake profundity, faux profundity. Like rather than give us some substance, give us a definition, give us an explanation, you just keep asking questions. And then when you're pressed, you just make a outrageous statement, or like a something that sounds profound. Like, to believe means you stake your life on it, bucko. You stake your life. That's what it means to believe. You stake your life. Okay, well, clearly not. Like, clearly that in one sense, maybe that's like if you have a belief in God, or you have a belief to defend your nation, but you can use believe in like, do you believe that this pen exists? That's what he says next. The atheist says, do you believe that this pen exists? Are you going to stake your life in that? Are you going to, you won't lie to protect your life regarding belief in a pen? And obviously you can't back up this outrageous definition of belief that he's given.
You live for it, and you die for it.
You live for it, and you die for it.
That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
What does that mean? Like, it is the presupposition of your action. Okay, so what do you presuppose? Whatever you presuppose, then that's what you believe in. Okay. So do you believe according to that, do you believe in God? Let's just go by your definition. Like, is God the presupposition of your actions? Can you affirm that? But he won't answer the question.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
how would you define belief? Something you say?
Can I explain? Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life?
Don't be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them,
example.
would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
You can't answer hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that because
Did
it's
you eat
far.
today?
Look,
Did you
don't
eat today?
play games.
I'm not playing games. I'm just
Yes,
asking if
you
you ate
are.
it.
If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing games.
I don't understand why that's like, did you eat today? Like, that's not a hypothetical. Like, did you eat today is a question of your past. Like, do you remember eating today? Yes or no? I think what he was trying to go for is like a hypothetical conditional. Like, how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning? How would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning? So that's a hypothetical because I did eat breakfast. But if you can't understand that it's a hypothetical, then you can't answer the question. Well, I did eat breakfast. So your question it doesn't make sense. I did eat breakfast. So why are you asking me how I would feel if I didn't? Well, it's a hypothetical. Imagine if you didn't eat breakfast, how would you feel? And there are certain people, low IQ people, who can't answer that question. They can't answer because they don't understand hypotheticals. And it seems like Jordan Peterson is in that boat. I don't think it's actually because he doesn't understand hypotheticals. It's because he's been trapped and he doesn't want to say... He doesn't want to say that, no, I wouldn't lie to save the people hiding in the attic when the Nazis come. He doesn't want to contradict himself, so he pretends like he doesn't understand hypotheticals.
I just told you I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have and you want to protect them.
I think you should just give up on that line of questioning.
Give up on just like trying to clarify your position? Because are you like uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask you.
It's just a basic hypothetical where you put Jews' lives at stake in Nazi Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously, you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
why
anti-fascist?
are you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save someone's life.
I'm answering it in
Obviously,
a manner you
that's not what
don't
truth is.
find acceptable.
Obviously, because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically, because that's already happened. Like that's in the past. You don't have a time travel device. We're bringing this logical hypothetical up to show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with Christianity.
I can imagine that I was in a situation where
That's a very good assessment of Jordan Peterson. Like, you don't want to answer questions, so you muddy the waters with these fake, profound statements. Like, believing something means that you're willing to live and die for it. Like, that's fake profundity, and it makes you sound like you actually care about the subjects that you're talking about, the religious themes that you're talking about, but you actually don't believe in them. You actually don't define yourself by them or live by them, by that religious tradition, by a conventional understanding of God and belief and worship and religion. So your grift is up. The grift is up, and this atheist, like, this is like, he's getting destroyed. He's getting absolutely cooked by random guys off the street. Random Redditors are just toying with him.
The best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage.
Okay,
but
fine.
that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So
Right.
you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you lied in that scenario. So
Not
clearly that's
without
not what
the
you see to be true.
context that I put it in.
You were not willing to
I
die for it.
said-
You were not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation. You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a
How's
corner.
it possible? Is there something contradictory about it? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Yeah.
The bigger context here is that Jordan Peterson presenting himself as if he is some principled advocate of the truth. It's such a farce because he is obviously a sellout shill, especially since he's been meeting with Netanyahu, joining the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro. He's sold out his soul. He's completely sold out the truth when he is advocating for what Israel is doing, telling Israel to give him hell. So he is the biggest opponent of the truth. He's the biggest opponent of what is actually happening in the world, the destruction that we see. He won't acknowledge that truth. He won't speak the truth for the sake of the truth. No, he only says what he says for the sake of his job, for the sake of his position, for the millions of dollars that they're shoving in his pocket for being this kind of fake prophet, this false prophet for Israel. He's the exact opposite of a truth teller. He's the exact opposite of a warrior for the truth, standing for the truth no matter what the cost. And it's so disgusting, it's so revolting that he wants to present himself as if that is who he is. I'll start believing that you are an advocate of truth at all costs, Jordan Peterson. If you leave the Daily Wire, you denounce Ben Shapiro, you denounce Israel, and you denounce yourself. You denounce your past self as a charlatan who sold out for a few shekels so that you could portray yourself as some kind of celebrated public intellectual. You flushed that all down the toilet when you joined Israel, and you rubber stamped the genocide when you said give them hell. When you said give them, and you advocated everything that Israel is doing now in their ethnic cleansing campaign. You have signed off on that, yet you claim to be an advocate of the truth. You make me sick. You're a disgusting fiend, a disgusting low-life scum, garbage, because of what you have said about Palestine, because of how you have stood with Israel. You're no truth teller. Don't make me sick.
My next claim is that everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it.
Okay, so let's skip ahead. Nothing really interesting. Again, his idea of worship is just prioritizing something in your life. Like, if you prioritize something, that means that you are worshiping. If you sacrifice voluntarily for something, that's what morality is about. That's what Christianity calls you, to sacrifice for a higher principle. Okay, if that's what it means to be Christian, well, Muslims have this value. You have Hindus who have this value. Atheists have this value. So they're all worshiping. Okay. So this is not a defense of the Bible. This is not a defense of Christianity. This is not a defense of religion, because even atheists can have this type of religious morality. They also are willing to sacrifice in certain cases for something higher that they believe in. That's not worship what worship is. That's not in religions, especially a Judeo-Christian and Islamic religion. Worship means being a slave, being obedient, having reverence for God, and seeking the pleasure, not of yourself, not of other people, seeking the pleasure of God. That's what it means to worship. And that's why you will sacrifice your own desires, your own well-being, in some cases, your own life, for the sake of God, for the sake of your religion. That's what worship amounts to. Worship means following what God has said. God is commanding you to pray 5 times a day, fast in the month of Ramadan, give 2.5% of your wealth, your accumulated wealth, to charity as zakat, as alms. These are the commands that God has given, and then you abide by them. You are obedient to them because you revere God. There's a hierarchy there. There's a hierarchy where we recognize that beyond ourselves is the Creator, and we worship Him because He is the Creator, because He is the all-powerful, the all-knowing, the merciful, the just. That is, we worship God in this hierarchical relationship as His slaves. That's what it means to worship. Worship isn't a utilitarian principle of trying to maximize the good for the most amount of people. But this is what Jordan Peterson claims. He completely distorts what worship actually is in his attempt to try to prove to atheists that they're also involved in some kind of worship. No, they're not. No, they're not. But this was the highlight. This was the best interaction with this kid named Danny. He looks like he could be like a freshman in college.
Things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within the
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to.
Attend to.
Prioritize.
Do
And
Catholics
sacrifice for.
What do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
Okay, now you're adding stuff to the definition. But your original definition...
I added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
How do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I
private.
was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
So they literally changed the title of the YouTube video because it was originally 1 Christian versus 20 atheists. And then Jordan Peterson stutters and trips up over his own stupidity.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
I'm done with him. So you're really quite nothing, aren't you? That was, just a brilliant response. That was the best thing an atheist has ever said in the history of atheism. Calling out Jordan Peterson for you're really quite nothing, aren't you? And then Jordan Peterson can't handle it. He can dish it out, but he can't take it. He can't take his own medicine getting a response like that. You're really quite nothing. Okay, I'm done with you. So it's just humiliating, and not for Jordan Peterson. Clearly, he has no shame, but it's humiliating for any fans of Jordan Peterson. Like, you've been duped. This charlatan, this grifter has been taking your money, millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions from Christians. And he can't even identify with you. He can't even say that he is or is not a Christian. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. And how dare we ask? How dare we ask such a question? So this is just so embarrassing. Okay, well, the rest of the video, the fourth claim that he talks about, atheists accept Christian morality but deny the religion's foundational stories. He rejects the foundational stories as well. Like, he rejects the stories as being actual historical truths. When he talks about Moses, when he talks about Elijah, when he talks about even Jesus Christ, he's not willing to entertain that these were actual real historical figures and the kinds of things that they did or said or preached or the miracles that they performed, those were actually real things. He doesn't actually believe that anyone has wrestled with God, even though that's how that's the title of one of his books, I believe. He doesn't literally believe that those things happen. So how is he different from an atheist? An atheist who also denies that those things actually historically took place. The atheist just says that those are myths, and maybe we can debate whether these myths are useful or whether these myths have some kind of moral teaching that we can benefit from. We can debate that, but we agree, us atheists and you, Jordan Peterson, that they didn't literally happen. Like, they weren't actual historical events that took place. We can agree on that, right, Jordan Peterson? And Jordan Peterson will, of course, agree. So this is, in a nutshell, Jordan Peterson's grift, debating atheists by saying that, oh, atheists accept religion, they accept God, they accept religious morality, they just don't know it. They just don't know it. And why is this the case? Because religion is just liberal atheism. God is just the conscience and the infinite universe, the infinite truth. And worship just means to prioritize things and put things on a hierarchy that you prioritize. And to believe means the presupposition of your action. So therefore, all atheists are actually deeply religious. Like, this, he literally says that. He literally says that atheists are even more religious than religious people. So this is really a pointless, stupid argument. The part where he talks about violence, that was actually interesting too. Was it this guy? I do want to share this because it's worth commenting on.
Hi there.
It's very nice to meet you.
What's your
Ian.
name?
I'm Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Yes. So God says that you can own people as property. He says that you can beat them with a rod too. He commands genocide in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, and in Samuel. I mean, they have a goddamn baby barbecue in Numbers. Like, is all of this in line with Christian ethics?
No.
So then God doesn't fit within Christian ethics.
Well, the biblical library is a continuing story, and everything written in it has to be contextualized by the entire text. There's 65,000 hyperlinks in the biblical text. And you can take pieces of it out of context and criticize them, and that's what you're doing. But that's a mistake, I think. It's an analytic mistake because you're putting the cart before the horse.
I really don't think so. I think
Yeah,
that
I know
if we say that something is Christian ethics, then I think that all of the books essential to Christianity would fit with it, especially if it's like the main character. When we're talking about
How do you deal with
God,
the morality of war?
So
How do you think you should deal with the morality of war?
Sure. Because I feel like the morality, like I feel.
What morality of war says to kill babies and to smash infants upon the rocks? What moral? It's only the Bible. It's only Judaism that has this concept of wiping out women and children. It's only Judaism that has the concept of harem warfare, and it's based on the Hebrew Bible, i.e. the Old Testament. And we're seeing that play out in 4K. We're seeing the videos of that in 4K. That's not the morality of war. No one shares that kind of morality other than what's found in the Old Testament.
I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind of, I guess I just think it's like kind of an absurdity to say that God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, but sure, well, we can go on my ethics. That's totally fine.
I don't know what you mean by an absurdity. What game are you playing with?
Well, I just think that it's an absurdity to say that the Christian God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, that like the Christian God isn't like Christian ethical.
I said that the specific statements that you made don't take the context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Sure, then let's go through the example. Yeah, so, and I apologize. So let's go through the example. So in 1 Samuel 15:3, God says, go and slaughter the Amalekites, slaughter the men, the women, the children, the infants. What's the justification for that? Is that in line with Christian ethics?
That's a good question. I don't really know what to do with the terrible, blood-soaked, saturated history of the human past. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. I mean, what you try to do in your own life, as far as I can tell, is to conduct yourself in a manner that makes such things much more unlikely.
I totally agree.
We're all saddled with the problem of the catastrophes that got us here, aren't we?
Yeah, but this one was commanded by God. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's what differentiates it from anything else, is that this one, it's God saying, go and do this atrocity.
Do you think that there's ever such a thing as a righteous war?
I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. It would probably be situational.
Well,
that's a dumb answer. Of course, there's such a thing as righteous war. And liberals, of all people, liberal atheists, have a long history of advocating for righteous war to spread freedom and democracy and enlightenment and science and progress. Like, atheists have been the biggest proponents of righteous war and righteous genocide even. So this is a disingenuous response from the atheist. But he's also making the point that, look, the Bible is not describing a blood-soaked history. The Bible is prescribing war, harem warfare, to cleanse the earth in the land that God's chosen people have inherited in the land of Israel, to do harem warfare, and then even outside of the land of Israel, to also go to war and also smite the Amalek. To smite the enemy of the people, the enemies of the people of God, even beyond Israel, to wipe out their memory, completely destroy them, men, women, and children. So this is genocide being commanded by the God of the Bible, who, again, Christians can't wash their hands of, because that is the same God in the New Testament, which is Jesus Christ. So Jesus Christ is advocating for genocide. And then Jordan Peterson has no response to this. Jordan Peterson has no Christian that I've debated, whether it was on the Patrick Bet David podcast or it's on the Modern Day Debate channel, has ever been able to address this and get out of this. Their explanations all fall far short of being able to justify these passages within the Bible that are undeniable.
Right. Fair enough.
But this one certainly wasn't a just war. The context for the Amalekite slaughter is that 400 years earlier, they fought one battle, which they lost, and God says, that's it, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the goddamn earth. And then 400 years later, he commands the Israelites to genocide their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. That's not a just war at all. And also, a genocide is not a war.
Well, a genocide can be a war, but...
Absolutely not. Look, the genociding of the Amalekites, the men, the women, and the infants, that's not a war. The infants aren't combatants.
Look, I already said that it's very difficult to look at...
Interesting how Peterson can't make a strong statement against genocide. Interesting that Jordan Peterson can't make a strong statement about killing women and children. Do you think that's related to him being employed by the Daily Wire, the Israeli Wire? You think that it might be related?
At the blood-soaked past and to know exactly what to do about it. The answer I gave to the gentleman who was sitting here before you is that it's necessary to read a text like the Bible at all of its levels of analysis simultaneously. And there's a directional morality that emerges across time that has its roots in the Old Testament, for example, with its restrictions against murder specifically, that makes itself manifest in the Christian texts as the insistence on voluntary self-sacrifice as the foundational belief. That's a profoundly anti-violence ethos.
Do you have the belief?
So the Bible prohibits murder, just like every moral system, like every religion, every moral system prohibits murder. And there's a concept of voluntary self-sacrifice. That's the core of Christianity, and that's somehow uniquely biblical. That's uniquely anti-violent. This is complete nonsense. Every religion has these concepts. But especially Jordan Peterson, remember his message to Muslims, he singles out Muslims as being uniquely violent, as having uniquely violent religious proclivities. Muslims are uniquely are influenced to become violent. This was his message to Muslims, and he's trying to draw us into peace and to accept peace and harmony and working together with our neighbors to adopt these Judeo-Christian values, because Islam is inherently violent. But when it comes to the Bible, this is just the blood-soaked human history, and all cultures have violence and killing women and children. He doesn't say that about the Quran. He doesn't say about, the Quran, the violence that is advocated in jihad. Sorry, having some connection problems. So this is his hypocrisy. He wants to saddle the Quran and Islam with violence, intolerance, and all Christians. Like when it comes to minor marriage, when it comes to corporal punishment, when it comes to conquest, when it comes to rules against like punishments, legal punishments for adultery, legal punishments for fornication, for homosexuality. When it comes to Islam, they say, well, this is the violence found in Islam and the Quran. This is intolerant violence. Islam doesn't recognize freedom and equality and individual choice. But if those same things are found in the Bible or in the Christian tradition, this is something found in all cultures, so you can't blame the Bible. It's just you have to understand the context. Very hypocritical and uncompelling. Okay, that is the analysis. Let's get into super chats and get your commentary, your feedback. Yeah, rare atheist W. Sorry, I'm having some internet connection problems, but hopefully you're gonna be able to see. You can play back anything and see what I was saying. Okay, let's go to the super chats. My question in recent last live show, Free Palestine. Okay, let me try to find. I saw this question someone put in, and I want to answer or address the question. Give me a second to pull it up. Where did it go? It's from the last live stream, which was the Wahhabi meltdown. I'll read you the question. Okay. This brother says, where'd it go? Stupid YouTube. I'll be very happy if Brother Daniel addresses my question in the upcoming show. I choose Super Thanks feature because questioning and live Super Chat have text limits. Indian viewer here. Question: a man like you, Daniel, you have extreme views of pro-Palestine, pro-boycott, pan-Islamic alliance, Sharia law, Khilafah, Islamic family system, anti-secularism, liberalism, feminism, colonialism, Zionism, LGBT, anti-secular education system. You criticize Israel, the U.S., with their ministers and allies openly. You oppose the Abraham Accords. You call out Western hypocrisy brutally. You expose Western biased news channels. You wish for a nuclear power in Iran. You've talked with Taliban people. You've praised the Palestinian resistance, and etc. And cherry on top, you're also criticized by the ADL, and you still live in the U.S. safely. Just how? Explain this. I never wish harm to our Muslim brother, but sometimes I think, Brother Daniel, you're on a watch list of the CIA or CVE, and they're making major plots against you or your family, like something in false accusations or crime, God forbid. For example, similarly happened with Rumeisa Ozturk, Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian activists who were deported. Because of your content, you give hope. Because of the content you give, hope you'll address it in a live session. Urgently waiting for Genius of Islam episode 4 and the think tank project. Be safe. And that's the comment. So people, if you live in India or you live in pretty much any other country, it's very shocking that how can you be someone in the US and you're openly criticizing the government, you're openly criticizing the establishment. And the thing with the United States is that the United States government is not threatened necessarily by me. When I criticize the president, I criticize their actions, I criticize their laws, that doesn't really pose a threat. That doesn't pose a threat because of my level of popularity. Now, if I were 10 times more popular or 5 times more popular, then maybe it would be a threat. Then they have to increase the censorship. And they've already censored me. They've already censored me off of different channels. I was banned on Twitter until Elon Musk bought Twitter and then reinstated accounts. I was banned. There are many things that I can't say on Facebook or whatever channel. I was banned from Instagram. So I do get censored. And as you gain popularity as an anti-establishment voice, then that's when you get increasingly banned from social media, like Andrew Tate, for example. And then they take further restrictions, more and more aggressive restrictions against you to make your life difficult, to get you in legal trouble, to block you from traveling, put you on a no-fly list, harass you at the border. These are all things that not only I have experienced, but many people who advocate for Palestine, for example, or are anti-Israel, or criticize the government for its handling of COVID, etc. You get that kind of those kinds of actions from the government come down on you. But that's the thing, like in the US, they want to pretend like we have this kind of freedom and we have rights, we have civil rights, we have human rights, there's a Bill of Rights in the Constitution. So there is a facade of a legal order that they abide by and certain rights that they protect. There is this facade and they just find ways, loopholes and different types of ambiguity in the law to crack down on political dissent. And that's what they do. This is the hypocrisy of the Western system. And the reason that you aren't seeing more of a crackdown on me personally or on MuslimSkeptic is that we aren't at that level as of now. We aren't as that popular as of now. So we are given the ability to speak, and that can change tomorrow. Tomorrow, if suddenly 10 times more people are watching the channel, then don't expect this channel to stay up very long. That's why we have Rumble, we're We're backed up on Rumble. We're backed up on different places in the possibility or perhaps the eventuality that we're going to be banned. And they escalate. Like banning and censorship is the first step, but political dissidents, America and the West in general, they've taken very harsh measures against political dissidents, whether it be through assassination, imprisonment. Look what they did to Julian Assange. Julian Assange just leaks or publishes leaked documentation coming from the U.S. intelligence apparatus, the U.S. military, showing all kinds of war crimes that the United States has committed, the surveillance that the U.S. government commits against the world, against its own people. So what does the U.S. government do? It puts Julian Assange under detention, basically, and he has to suffer in those conditions for years. And recently, he's been allowed to go free. But this is how the U.S. deals with political dissent. And it's because the U.S. is very powerful. The U.S. is very powerful, so it doesn't have to take the petty type of enforcement that you find in other countries. If I were in another country, then it would be more threatening if I start speaking against that country, because those countries are not necessarily as powerful as the United States. Those countries are more threatened. They're going to try to assassinate you. Like, look at what Saudi did to Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi was just a journalist writing for the Washington Post, but that was enough threat to the Saudi monarchy that they killed him. So that has to do with the power differential between the United States and some of these other countries. This is why when people say that, Daniel, why don't you make hijra? Why don't you go and live in a Muslim country? I tell them that yeah, that'd be a great thing to do if I was planning never to speak publicly again, to never talk about liberalism and feminism again, to never talk against the Abraham Accords ever again, or Israel. That would be a great thing to do. Why would I do that? Why, if I want to stop my dawah and just go live a private life, okay, yeah, I can go to any Muslim country. But just the way that the legal system is structured and the way that the U.S. actually regulates dissent and cracks down on dissent, it's more advantageous for me to stay in the United States and be able to advocate against liberalism, against Zionism, against feminism, against all of these modern ideologies. Okay, that's a long answer. I hope you understand now my position. One Muslim versus 20 atheists. Would you go if invited? Yes, I would. Palestina Viva, thanks for your super chat. I hope you go on Jubilee and show these godless people how a man of God moves. Yeah, we'll see. If Jubilee wants to invite me, one Muslim versus 20 libtards, one Muslim versus 20 feminists. Oh, that would be the best. One Muslim versus 20 feminists would be great. That'd be Jubilee. If you want views, bring me on. Put me in the saddle. GameCat says, brilliant video, brother, on Wahhabism. Shocking. Glad you enjoyed it. Tech Billy, thank you for your super chat. In the next documentary, could you please summarize beliefs and nuances in Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah Aqidah schools? Many of us don't know basics yet, are learning about Istighatha and in Hanbalism. Yes, inshallah, the next video is going to be, the next video in this series on Wahhabism is going to talk about Istighatha in more depth. Inshallah. Muslim Boogeyman, good to see you. Thanks for your super chat, bro. Tech Billy, may Allah preserve you and your family and us also. Ameen. Thank you, brother. Any other super chats? I'll look at the regular chat. 4 wives versus 20 feminists. That would be good. One Muslim versus 100 Wahhabis. Yeah, they won't even maybe that they'll agree to that. If it's like 1 versus 100, Maybe they would agree to that, actually. Maybe we can set that up. Me versus 100 Wahhabis. But I have a feeling that they won't even accept that. Did you see that recently Rabbi Ferris even was saying that no one should debate Daniel? No one should debate Daniel. Daniel is the devil. This is what Rabbi Ferris is tweeting. Daniel is the devil. No one should debate that devil, Daniel. So they'll never agree to debate me. What else you guys have to say? If Wahhabis accept debate, I'll stop eating carbs. That's gonna be hard. Stop eating carbs. I tried that once. I tried no carb diet or low carb diet, like a keto diet. I just couldn't maintain it, and I wasn't really seeing any results because they make it sound like, oh, if you just only eat protein and fat, you can eat as much as you want. Just don't eat carbs and you'll lose weight. It's a complete lie. Or it's completely false, at least for me. Because I was not eating, I was eating under the level that keto determines for getting into ketosis. And I was not losing weight. And it makes sense because if you're eating meat and you're eating fat, that's calories. And if you're eating more calories than you're burning, the body is going to store those calories as fat. So you have to be in a caloric deficit. It doesn't matter if the calories are coming from protein, carbs, or fat, as long as you're in a caloric deficit. What's your take on Sheikh Diddu, since Haddadis hate him so much, especially Ibn Shamsuddin? Just watch the Haqiqat show, Sectarian Brain Rot. Sheikh Diddu, mashallah, is a good sheikh. You can watch that. Allah is humiliating him. Who is him? Is that referring to Jordan Peterson or Rabbi Ferris or the Wahhabis? Daniel versus 100 blue hair obese atheist feminists. Yeah. Daniel should debate flat earth theory. Daniel, what's your take? Every time I give my take, people get angry, but I don't accept flat earth theory. Daniel is like 6'4". They're scared. Who's scared? Yeah, if I'm wearing shoes, then yeah, I'm 6'3". See, did Fareed respond yet? I didn't see a response. All I see him is whine and cry. That's all I see from Fareed. And then he has his response. Oh, we don't know what exactly you believe. We don't know what your exact beliefs are. Even though I paste the screenshot in the tweets, like, these are my views. This is what I'll debate you. I don't know exactly. You're contradicting yourself. Yeah, I've heard this before. These are the same lines that Jake was giving when he pretended like he was willing to debate me, and then he swore by Allah that I'll never debate you. So, like, this is a waste of time. We know your Wahhabi tricks. Like, you're not actually interested in debate. You're trying to save face, so it doesn't look like you're running away from my challenge. Daniel, how come you believe in gravity? Yeah, I mean, gravity waves. Okay. Allah is humiliating Jordan Peterson. Yeah, he's washed up. Every time he looks unhinged, like he looks like a crazy person. Starts crying. Like, I'm surprised within this debate with atheists, he didn't start crying. That would just be the cherry on top. Oh, now we're talking. Daniel versus 100 compassionate imams. Oof. That would be a good one. That'll be a good one. I'll just recite verses of the Quran. I'll just like recite verses on jihad. I'll recite verses on conquest, on jizya. I'll recite verses on al-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa and wadribuhunna. I'll just recite these verses, and that's enough for 100 compassionate imams to run like the wind. I'll start mentioning hadith. I won't even have to debate. I can just cite Quran and hadith. Bro, in your Wahhabi video, you mentioned you were going to speak more about Ibn Abdul Wahhab's teachers, but you didn't go deeper into that topic. Hook us up. No, I did mention, like, later in the documentary, we talk about As-San'ani, for example, or Shah Wali Allah Dehlawi, who also had the same teacher as Ibn Abdul Wahhab in Medina. And the point was that these other teacher or these other students from the same teacher, they were also opposed to grave veneration. They were also opposed to istighatha. It wasn't just Ibn Abdul Wahhab. Ibn Abdul Wahhab didn't have a monopoly on opposing grave veneration. These other scholars, however, didn't take the extra step that Ibn Abdul Wahhab did in declaring that all of these Muslims are mushrik, kafir, murtad. These scholars didn't declare war and jihad on other Muslims. That's the difference. So this responds to the Wahhabi lie that, oh, if it wasn't for Ibn Abdul Wahhab, we would still have so much shirk in the world and so much grave veneration and so much idol worship. It was thanks to Ibn Abdul Wahhab that he came, and it was through his jihad that we got rid of all of this shirk. That's false. You had many other scholars, some of them trained by the same teachers as Ibn Abdul Wahhab, who were also opposing these practices in their different parts of the world, like in the subcontinent or in northern Africa. Sorry I gotta call you out on this, but you came out with an amazing documentary on Wahhabis, but not Genius of Islam? Come on, brother. LOL. The documentary, like if you have to compare this documentary with Genius of Islam in terms of difficulty level, the documentary is like here, and Genius of Islam is like way up here in terms of difficulty. It's so much harder for this episode of Genius of Islam. Because again, with the documentary, yeah, you have a timeline of history, you have certain beliefs, you have certain quotes. I'm not saying it was easy. It took a lot of time and effort to put that documentary together. But Genius of Islam, it's just a whole other ball game. It's like much more difficult. It's taking much more time, and ultimately, we want it to be that much better. Like if you were blown away with the Wahhabi documentary, this Genius of Islam episode 4 is supposed to like completely blow your mind. Like it's supposed to completely change the game, inshallah. And it's not because of me, it's because of a whole team effort. Like we have an entire team researching, working on this. Okay, guys. I don't want the live stream to go much longer. People will watch. Fewer people will watch if it's too long. Cheers from France. Appreciate it, Yaku. All right, guys. That's our show. Appreciate everyone's contribution through the super chat and your commentary in the live chat. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to our newsletter. It'll help us keep in touch with you if in the case that the channel goes dark and we're censored. We'll see if that happens in the future. But make sure to subscribe. Check out our articles on MuslimSkeptic.com. We have so many articles coming out every week. Analysis on current events, a lot of historical analysis as well, analysis on technology, opinion. So check out our articles on MuslimSkeptic.com. Subscribe to the channel, contribute if you are able to, help us out with our dawah. And go watch the Wahhabi documentary if you haven't already. That's something that you will hopefully benefit from as well. And that's all we have. Until next time, inshallah, I will see you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.